This guy's going to humiliate me. He's going to put it through my legs. The whole league is in awe of him at the moment.
The A-League social media team are absolutely furious with you, by the way, because that got ended up with about 25 million views.
On a personal level, I'm disappointed that City got there, waited till 2:20 in the morning when I was calling comms, and then lost. If they went to 2:20 and they won, I would have said, thank you very much, that's fine.
Some header too.
It was a great header.
He would have been the best player in the history of the A-League, without a doubt.
They need to find solutions to that ASAP.
I'm just impressed you did some research.
Yeah, rare.
Oh, that is special. Unbelievable. This, ladies and gentlemen, is football.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Total A-Leagues. James Dodd, Tommy Orr and Daniel McBreen with you once again to dissect everything that happened in round 20 of the Isuzu A-League and, of course, look ahead to the stuff that's coming up this weekend. Tommy, nice to see you dressed up today.
Yeah, I know.
Relatively smart. You can't say the same for Surfer Boy on the end
I thought
there.
it was dress down day. T-shirt. All right, give me some rubbish, right? What else you got for me? Bring it.
Let's start with our moments of the round that was round 20, shall we? Tommy, you can start. You kick us off.
Yeah, for me, it was, I'm not going to go the Jets this week again. I'm going to say the Mariners beating MacArthur 3-1 to go into the sixth. That is now 7 games unbeaten, and they are just absolutely flying. I think it was quite funny that they ended up winning this game because the first 30 minutes I thought was probably one of their worst 30 minutes of the season so far. They were miles off it, but once they scored their first goal, kind of really changed the momentum of the game. And from there, you've got to give them so much credit for how they're kind of going about things, and they are looking very good going into the top 6.
Well, they know how to find a way. They've just crossed this line where all of a sudden they know how to find a way. There seems to be a real spirit there. When you talk to them now, they feel like this really tight-knit group, and they're finding the way. Warren Moon's done a wonderful job.
Yep. Has done a wonderful job. We'll come on to Warren Moon a little bit later on in the show as well, because there's an interesting topic I want to bring up with regards to him. Macca, what's your moment of the week? What are you going for?
Mine could have been, an iconic moment in Australian A-League football. I'm going to go with the Lawrence Thomas header. But the save for me, Delianov here, I think this is up there contender for save of the season. And if that went in, that would have been shown for years to come as the only goalkeeper to score from open play. But the save is fantastic. But also it's what it means in the title race as well. That goes in and they drop 2 points. All of a sudden, Auckland get closer to them, and Auckland haven't played yet. If they get their win behind that could change the whole trajectory of their season because it's now still in their hands. They can go into this game against Auckland now, lose, and still have it in their hands. So that, to me, not only was it save of the season, but the context was massive as well.
Some header too.
It was a great header.
Any chance of some of the strikers doing that?
They're ridiculous. I just got to say, James Dodd of the A-League social media team are absolutely furious with you, by the way, because that got ended up with about 25 million views for the social channels. My moment of the week, mentioned him last week. It's that man again, Juan Mata, a ridiculous free kick in the big blue. Just, you saw the angle, and the voice on the A-League's download spoke about this on Monday. He knew it was already in. He was peeling off.
Yeah.
And I just think we're so privileged at the moment to be watching a player of his calibre in the sort of the twilight of his career, just enjoying himself. His little skipping behind him, behind the goal there, a little fella doing it. And there was a ball boy as well from Sydney FC who gave him a bit of ear as he went past. Yeah. But I think we just, gents, you see a player who's just enjoying himself.
Well, that's the thing, right? He's 38 next month, and
this is Bruno Fernandes, by the way, at the training ground,
yeah.
Carrington, with Harry Maguire watching that goal go in. It's just, this is what the A-Leagues is so good for the competition.
Yeah, and the way that he's sending it global again with what he does, but he looks, and I think I said it in commentary, he looks like a kid just enjoying himself.
Yeah.
He's 38 years old coming up to, he's skipping around in the background with a big smile on his face. He is enjoying life, and it's showing.
And you always see your teammates kind of talk up your own players and stuff, but you saw after the game the likes of Stamatopoulos going up to him and wanting his jersey. Yeah. So, it's kind of transcended his own teammates now, and just the whole league is in awe of him at the moment.
Yeah, he is a marquee in its truest form. We're going to come on to the marquee topic a little bit later on in the show, because one of the guests that the gents had on a different show, Kicking Back, which we'll preview later on, they had a very interesting take about someone else who was a foreign player, a Spaniard who came to the league, and they believe he was up there with the very best. Let's start with matters closer to hand, shall we? Melbourne City, gents, they are out of the ACL Elite now. They lost on penalties to Buriram United. They were bidding to become the first team to reach the quarters of the ACL Elite since 2014. Mackie, you covered this game for us last night.
Yeah.
Just Did you get the sense it was going to be one of those nights for Melbourne City when this incident happened and Buriram reduced to 10 very early on?
Yeah, the first leg they didn't really produce much at home. And notwithstanding this man, Marcus Eunice, they didn't really create much at all. Caputo had a couple of chances. The one just after extra time started, this one here, he'll be very disappointed in his finish there. Apart from that, against 100 minutes against 10 men, you would have expected them to produce a little bit more quality in that final third, and they seemed devoid of ideas. They seemed to go down one side, and when Buriram put bodies in those areas, they didn't come out and go to the other side quickly. They kept trying to persist. And in the end, you sort of felt that if Buriram make it to penalties, they'd ridden that storm, that they were going to have the confidence to go through with it, and they did. On a personal level, I'm disappointed that City got there, waited till 2:20 in the morning when I was calling comms, and then lost. If they went to 2:20 and they won, I would have said, thank you very much, that's fine. But to crash out, I think it's serious times for them now, because we were talking about them going, all right, let's put our eggs in this basket because of the financial rewards. And if they won that game as well, it would have been another place for an Australian team, not next year, the year after, with the coefficient. So there was a lot of ramifications from that. And now they're sitting outside in 9th position in the league. You know, Aurelio needs to turn that switch on to form into the A-League, because they have struggled.
And if you asked them before the season, you know, we're not going to make the A-League finals, but we're going to get out of the group in the ACL and go no further than that, there's no chance they would have accepted that. So coming out in this stage, although, you know, maybe a little bit unlucky on the night, I think that, you know, now the pressure on them going into the back end of this A-League season is immense, because if you look at all their problems that they've had in the A-League so far this season, I think that in that ACL game, it's kind of been, you know, the one Melbourne City you see in the ACL and then the Melbourne City you see in the A-League, they've kind of been two different teams. Yep. That game last night, that was kind of more reminiscent of Melbourne City in the A-League. And so, you know, the same kind of problems they've been facing in the front third, not creating enough. They need to find solutions to that ASAP. And Marcus Eunice, you said him. I think aside from him, I think Daniel Azani's been pretty disappointing since he came back. Ryan Teague struggled. That creative those creative players in the front third just have not clicked. And if they don't click soon, I think they're going to find themselves wanting.
Well, let's look at the numbers, shall we? Because Melbourne City have 7 games left this season. The game in hand, I believe, is against the Mariners, so it's definitely not an easy game. They've got Sydney FC away next up. If you look at their points tally, they're on 22 points. 35 points is the lowest that City have got in the City Football Group era since they took charge in Melbourne. So as it stands, Aurelio Vidmar has one of the lowest points per game ratio of any City manager this season. Bear in mind, he got the second highest points per game ratio finished with last year. There's been a big shift this year. Now, many people will say that's because they've been juggling 2 competitions. They've had injuries. I mean, they had a lot of injuries last year. Can this act as a positive? Can you give City fans something positive to latch onto here and think maybe now we don't have the distraction? You know, it was a positive distraction for the club, but can you see that, gents? Can you see this is now Vidi can say, right, you have one focus, one game a week. This has to be it now.
I think Macca said it in pre-show off air, and I think this is true. When at Christmas time they got through their busy ACL period and they had a good run in the A-League where they could put all their energy into the A-League, and you thought, oh, they're going to go on a run here and kind of climb the table. The complete opposite happened. So I think using the kind of excuse, if you want to put it as that, as now they can rest, and that isn't going to really work in their favour, because earlier in the season when they had that benefit, they didn't maximise it. So I think they brought in players who were maybe underdone, didn't have a lot of kind of match rhythm with their clubs. They came into the A-League, and it's really, really difficult to start, you know, hit the ground running and to play against players who are probably more match fit than you, they're sharper than you. And I think that's also been a big issue for them, is because the players they brought in weren't ready to kind of step in, and because of their injury crisis, they didn't really have an alternative.
And if you're in this position now where you can look at it and go, we're out, we need to flick the switch and use that disappointment to go, right, we need to really focus. There's a lot of young players in the squad, real young players, you know, who have been coming through. Sometimes that pressure for them is a negative, whereas the senior players might be able to band together and get it going. But you're right, the players they have brought in didn't have match minutes. You know, they're still trying to get up to speed. And then when it's disappointing and you can't find your rhythm and it's disjointed, it's hard to just flip a switch and get into it. It's going to be an interesting few weeks coming up for them, because the next, 6 weeks they've got, they do play most of the games against teams in the bottom half of the league. So that might be in their favour. But I think that game against the Mariners, that catch-up game, could be a big one as well.
And the next game is against Sydney FC, who obviously are doing much better than them on the table. And I think if they lose that game, they are in trouble.
Is it a must-win for Aurelia Vidmar and Melbourne City if they're really looking at not just getting 6th place, but, you know, a home draw in the final, for example?
Well, they've got 7 games left. I think they need to win 5 of them. If they want to get enough points to get into the 6, they probably need to win 5 of those 7 games.
Yeah, massive. Well, they do take on Sydney FC on Tuesday as part of round 21 in the Isuzu A-League. So a massive game against the Sky Blues at Allianz Stadium. OK, talking of massive games, I don't think it gets any bigger than the game that's coming up this weekend, gents. Newcastle Jets against Auckland FC at McDonald Jones Stadium. Game of the season, without doubt. Yeah. I think most people are looking forward to this one. Let's start with the Jets, though. If they win this, Tommy Orr, is that Premier's Plate favouritism and by some distance?
Well, I think 7 points clear, you have to say. For me, I think if they win this game, they've won the title. I think that they'll be uncatchable in that. And also, you can't ignore the fact now that, is it 11 or 10 or 11 games now they've been
10 undefeated.
10 undefeated. You can't ignore that. So their trajectory is like that. It just feels like, for Auckland, this is a must-win. For the Jets, it's probably a can't-lose situation, or don't want to lose. But, you know, you have to say, though, Auckland are coming up against the Jets, not at the worst moment. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say against a team that's 10 games unbeaten. But if you were coming up against the Jets a month ago, I think they were a much more formidable kind of opponent, or you'd be much more, you know, thinking that this is going to be a really tough game. I think the last few weeks, the Jets have been much more laboured in their performance, Macca.
But you can look at that the other way and say that, you know, when they're on fire, they move the ball well and teams don't know what to do. But now they're learning to win other ways, which they did earlier in the year. When we go back to Auckland and Melbourne City away, 2 in a row back then, they fought through them with men down against Auckland. They held on against City with a real deep defensive thing and count on the counter-attack. They've learned to do that, and that's what good teams do. You can play not to your level and still get results and pick up points. That's championship material.
Well, will Mark Milligan be a championship-winning coach at the end of the season? One thing's for sure, he was very, very pleased with that performance and the win over the Wanderers when speaking to Ben Homer at the weekend.
Does it become harder each week because of the standards from the opposition, obviously? They want to step up to meet you.
Yeah, of course, but in many senses, that's, you know, it's a good challenge. They've put themselves in this situation to earn that respect from oppositions. And as I said, we know that within what we do, we can control those moments. And again, we've had to make slight adjustments, but they're more than capable, as you've seen today. As I said, I think that's, for me, the most complete sort of performance that we've had since I've been here.
The most complete performance since he's been here, and he didn't call him mate either in that press conference. Like he did to Robbie Thompson. Let's flip the script and then look at Auckland, because the Black Knights came into this game off the back of, by their standards, a very disappointing 2-2 draw against Perth at the weekend. They were forced to come from behind, obviously, to get that point. Question I've got for you, gents, is with Auckland, we've seen their results recently. So 2-2 draw against Perth. Melbourne City, they won 3-0, a big game. Wellington Phoenix, a massive game. They win 5-0. Sydney FC, they battle back hard, albeit in certainly comical circumstances for Sydney to get that draw in the midweek game. They beat Sydney FC 1-0 before that. But then if you look when they go to Perth, they lose 2-1. The Mariners, a team they would have been expecting to beat at home, they draw 2-2. Are Auckland almost better served in these big games? Are they a team this year under Steve Corica that maybe thrives and flourishes in these bigger games rather than win games where they're expected to win against the likes of Perth and Mariners?
Well, let's look back last year where they were ruthless all the way through the year, and then they got the finals and we were all like, they're going to be in the grand final, and bang, they got knocked out by Melbourne Victory. Maybe there's been a shift in the mindset a little bit to, you know, these are the big occasions we need to step up for, and those lesser games, as you would say, they're just not quite hitting the mark. But look, this is going to be a huge game. I can't...
It's probably the Jets' biggest game since the grand final game, you have to say, in 8 years.
Without a doubt. I agree. I'm with Tommy. If the Jets win this game, premiership over. If it's a draw, it's still okay, they could be caught. If Auckland win this, I wouldn't be surprised if Auckland steamroll home and maybe take over the top of them. I said a few weeks ago that they're not as scary as they were before, and then they came out and won 5-0 and 3-0. I'm going to say that, again, they're not as scary as they were before because now they've drawn with Perth, but this is big game.
Yeah.
And so they're going to step up.
Do you know who who will almost certainly start on the weekend, who was on the bench in this game, was Louis Estrada.
Yes.
And I think that the difference he makes for them, he breaks up all the counter-attacks, and against the Jets, he's exactly the kind of player you could dream of having in your team, because the Jets love to play through the middle and kind of get their creative plays in those pockets. Louis Estrada, he'll have a field day breaking up play in those areas. So him being fit enough to start this weekend is going to be very important for Auckland, I think.
Well, if you think about the last 2 times these 2 sides played, was in Auckland, and the Jets won both of them. The first of which was that game where it was like monsoon conditions at the end. Yeah. And obviously, as you touched on, Macca, Auckland, they pulled themselves level in this game after Rocky Rose had fired them in front. They had a man sent off. They had 2 players suffered ACL injuries in this game. They held, I think, with 9 men in the end, Newcastle. But let's put your tactician hat on. In terms of a setup, are Auckland suited to play against this Jets side in the way that we know the Jets? Maybe the expectation on the Jets now playing in front of what we hope is another bumper crowd at McDonald Jones Stadium. Does that suit Auckland?
There's no Sakai. See, I think the Jets do so much damage in those wide areas when they get lots of bodies in the wide areas, little runs going in behind. No Sakai there of lots of experience that's not going to be there. And they can also do this real well.
Yeah, they can.
I actually think the Jets, and now Auckland will probably come out and prove me wrong on the weekend. I think the Jets are really suited very well to play against Auckland. I differ a little bit from Tommy. You said that they like to go through the middle and Verstrada will be there to break it up. I think they do their best damage out wide. They move those ball into those wide areas. Verstrada's not there. He's blocking up the central areas. They get in behind, they get balls in the box, they cut balls back. When you look at their goals there, they all come from wide areas with forward runs. And I think they're really dangerous. And Auckland, if they can close those wider areas down, because Verstrada, if he's playing, will close the middle down on his own if he has to, then they've got a real chance of getting a win.
Because if you look at the Wanderers' performance on the weekend against the Jets, in the first half, the Wanderers did fantastically well to frustrate them. And they sat very deep and they looked to counter-attack. And Brandon Brello even had a chance about 15 seconds into the game, a huge chance. You look at that kind of template of sitting deep and trying to frustrate the Jets. The likes of Jesse Randall, Lockie Brooke, Cosgrove, who was awesome on the weekend, them on the counter-attack is also very, very dangerous for the Jets. And the Jets showed on the weekend that they can be pretty susceptible to against the counter-attack. So.
I actually think the Jets defend better against counter-attacks than they do if they're deep in the box.
Yeah.
Balls into the box, we saw the goal from Kraev. Crosses, I think they're a little bit more vulnerable than they are when they're on the counter-attack. I think Natta defends much better when he's up with the speed. Same as the 2 fullbacks. I think the speed they can cover well. And Shaughnessy, he might not have the speed, but his timing and his reading of the game, really sets them up to defend better when they're forward.
What's your tip for that one?
I'm going to go with the Jets.
Yeah.
I think the Jets are going to get it done in front of a crowd of over 20,000. Get out there, Jets fans. Wow. They better get there because you don't get games like this very often. First v second, pretty much talking about premiership done with 5 weeks to go. You don't get it very often, so get out and support.
100%. Let's talk some fantasy football time, shall we? Because the question's been posed on social media and with us in our production meetings. If you had to pick a preferred front 3 of the 2 sides, they've been so prolific for multiple players across both squads. If you're picking Clayton Taylor, Lockie Rose or Eli Adams against Jesse Randall, Sam Cosgrove, and let's say Lockie Brooke, I know he's been kind of rotated in and out, managing his fitness and whatnot at the moment. Which front 3 do you pick and why?
Well, they've been the highest performing 2 front 3s in the league, but for me, it's the Jets. They scored 43 goals this season.
You've been on the Jets all year. It's not hard to be, though.
Well, they scored the most goals, and I just think the way they kind of move in and out of those spaces, and Clayton Taylor for me, I've just loved watching him play over the last few months. Such an intelligent player, and it's close, but definitely Jets.
I'm with you as well. For all the things that you've mentioned there, and I think the way that they move and flow together, and the amount of goals that they've scored, they can score from anywhere. Jets front 3 just pip them.
Can you see an argument for Steve Corica to? I mean, Guillermo Myers obviously been in and out of the side as well. Do you think Lockie Brooke has to come back into the side for the weekend?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
We were talking about him being a bolter earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think he's a tremendous player. I think the front 3 you mentioned is their strongest front 3 by some distance.
Yeah.
Well, it is shaping as a massive, massive weekend in the Isuzu A-League. Let's take a look at the ladder, shall we? Because at the moment, Newcastle do have that 4-point cushion over Auckland, owing to the fact that Auckland slipped up, if you call it that, at home against Perth in the last round. Then you've got Sydney FC in third. Sydney FC, are we still saying that they're in Premiership contention, guys, realistically? Or is this week, can they ill afford to drop?
This week will have a big bearing on their, depending on, if just say it's a Auckland win or a draw in that game and they win, then it changes. They might still have a chance. I think they've got to play both of them, don't they, as they come through? So it's still within their grasp. For me on the ladder is that 6th place down. When you look at the Mariners have a game in hand. Or
Victory, Adelaide, Mariners, obviously in the other side's in the top 6. You just saw on the other side.
And I think if the Mariners win that game in hand, and I know it's a little bit down the line, it opens up there's that split, that real split comes from the top 6 to the bottom 6, where the teams below go, oh, now it's 5 points, 6 points. It becomes untenable.
Everyone in the bottom half of the table will be hoping that the Adelaide can get the job done against the Mariners.
Yes.
Otherwise, that will exactly what you're saying will start to happen. And I think no team that will be cheering more is Melbourne City. They'll be cheering the most. So that Melbourne City-Sydney FC game as well, I think that game also has huge ramifications, because if Melbourne City was to lose, all of a sudden 8th to 12th is all of a sudden a bit
Nearly
of
every
daylight
game
as
this
well.
weekend, we've got something where we can look at. If you look at those from the Mariners-Adelaide game down, every single game has huge ramifications. So you look, if the Mariners win, they open up that gap below. Then you've got Premiership game, just the Jets and Auckland below. Now, then Victory versus Macarthur. Victory win that, Macarthur lose. That gap looks even worse. And then Sydney and Melbourne City. Sydney's still nudging for Premier's play, and Melbourne City lose that. It becomes real tough for them.
And I think, was it the last time the Mariners played Adelaide, they absolutely thumped them
4-0
at Coopers.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of history in that game. I'm sure Adelaide won't want that to happen again. So that's a really interesting one as well.
Yeah. Well, 2 people who will be watching, no doubt, with very, very keen eyes this weekend are Alex Grant and Ryan Grant. The Sydney FC duo joined the duo to my left, Danny McBreen and Tommy Orr, on a new show we got here on the A-League's Kicking Back. Take a listen to what the boys had to say, specifically when Alex Grant was asked about Diego Castro. Take a listen.
The ball was glued to him, like all the time. And I remember talking to Brandon O'Neill, because obviously Brandon was from Perth as well, and he'd come in the off-season, I'd say to him, like, what does Arnie do when you play Glory? He's like, as long as you stop Castro, you'll win the game. Yeah. And that's all that matters.
Good luck doing that, though.
And that was it.
Done.
Yeah, and to be fair, he was knocking on a bit. I mean, we got him I think he was, 32 when he came to the league or something like that, and he was 38 when he left, and he was unbelievable. And I think that Western Seaboard, Eastern Seaboard, he doesn't always get the credit. He's not always up there in everyone's top 5, but he's certainly in my top 2 or 3, without a doubt.
A big part of you winning trophies.
I think he was just at the wrong club, in all honesty. Do you know what I mean? I think if he'd been on this side,
everyone would be raving.
He would have been the best player in the history of the A-League, without a doubt.
Big words from Alex Grant, Ryan Grant as well. You can catch that episode on the A-League's YouTube channel. Kicking Back is the show with the boys. They'll also be doing a Macarthur edition shortly, which is Harrison Sawyer and Luke Brown. Very much one to look forward to. But back to the topic at hand. Big words from Alex Grant there about Diego Castro. You played against the Spanish maestro. Do you agree? If he'd been playing on let's say, for a Sydney FC or a Victory or a Brisbane Roar or something like that, do you think he would have been the best ever?
It's a big if, and so it's hard to say how he would have gone in some of those players' shoes. But what I can say is that when you played against him, coming up against a Boyce or a Ninkovic, you always thought, they might get the better of me. You're going to go and press them, and they might dribble past you, or they might, make a really intelligent pass around you. If you were pressing Castro, you thought, this guy's going to humiliate me. He's going to put it through my legs. Like, what is he going to do? And that is just different level. His individual skill level, I would say, surpasses the other two in terms of his dribbling. He was also playing in a team that, especially early doors when he first came to Perth, probably wasn't really competitive in terms of challenging for finals or for trophies. But he could single-handedly get the ball in his own 18-yard box and travel almost the distance of the field and create things with that. And there's not many players in A-League history who have done that.
No. I remember Liam Reddy, early doors, saying to me, this guy's one of, if not the best. Yeah. He's unbelievable. And I remember having a bit of a chuckle because I said, well, to be one of the best, you've got to win things. And they weren't winning things at that stage. But he was undoubtedly individually doing well, like Johnny Warren medalist. But then he was a big catalyst in for them winning trophies. He was outstanding. And then that's when I think you get elevated from, all right, I'm a great player who gets the individual accolades, but when the team now starts to win trophies and you immediately escalate, you're in the conversations. And maybe if he was in a bigger club over on the Eastern Seaboard where he might have had more opportunities to win trophies, that might have been the way he took.
I think people forget with Diego Castro, this is a guy who came directly from La Liga. Like, he didn't come from Spanish second division where he'd spent a bit of time in his career there. Like, he came when he probably didn't need to come, if that makes sense. Like, he opted to come for his family and to come and play in Australia. And like, I think Alex Grant is right. I think if he was playing on this side of the country, then he would be, and people would have, maybe more eyeballs would have on him, and his talents would have been appreciated by not just fans, but people like yourselves who played against him.
Yeah, and he didn't play for the heavyweights, the traditional heavyweights in the Liga, but if you look back on his career, and I remember doing some research on him, he was linked with the likes of Atletico Madrid at different stages, like huge international clubs constantly for years during his career. And I mean, that just speaks volumes to how highly they rate him over there. So we're just lucky that we got to see him play, and wasn't so lucky to play against him, maybe, but lucky to see him.
I'm just impressed you did some research.
Rare.
Right, next on our agenda for quick hits today. This is one I posed and got laughed at by the gents in the green room beforehand. Let's take Mark Milligan out of the equation because pending.
That was a goalpost before we started.
Pending, unless Mark Milligan gets himself sent off before the end of the season, is therefore ineligible for Coach of the Year. Mark Milligan should be Coach of the Year.
Should we remind him about that too? Don't get sent off. It's happened to another coach and he was livid.
Yeah, exactly.
Go, Monty.
Yeah, love you, Monty. Is Warren Moon a candidate for Coach of the Year? With the job that he has done so far at the Central Coast Mariners. Bearing in mind, we come into the season, they've had... Nobody expected the Mariners to be anywhere near the finals, I don't think, coming into this season. They had Mark Jackson left right on the eve of the season, one of their most successful coaches of all time. They had an ownership change midway through the campaign where a lot of people at the club actually lost their jobs who didn't have, football department contracts. Warren Moon has done an amazing job, has he not? Does he get the flowers that he deserves?
Absolutely incredible. I think he is squeezing absolutely every single thing out of that club in terms of also their budgets and their resources. You look at their squad on paper, that is not a squad that is good enough, in my eyes, on paper, to be finishing sixth. So you have to give him so much credit for how he set them up, how he's made them difficult to beat, obviously on a bit of a run now. Also, none of the players until the last few weeks have been his players. And that's when they started to go on the run, because I think it was like 3 or 4 days before that F3 derby in round one of the season starting, where he took over the team. He, for the first kind of 12 rounds of the season, had to just make do with the squad that he was inherited. Now he has the opportunity to kind of bring in his own players, and you can see that they're getting better and better and better. Yeah,
and when you look across at, say, the other teams in the top six, take Millsy out because we know, he's far and away leading the race, but there are others you expected to be there or thereabouts roughly. Adelaide, maybe we thought they'd be contenders, but we all picked the Mariners to be right near the bottom, if not rock bottom, and he has done wonders. They've got this togetherness. They look like they've come together as a group, and the signings that they brought in January, I don't want to say we scoffed at them, and there's no disrespect to the players, but, Ali Ogler and Laval, they were coming from the space that they'd had to step back up, and they've brought in value to the team and have actually helped change. So the staff and Warren Moon and his staff have done a great job.
Yeah, great job indeed. Next on the quick hits agenda, Stefan Kolakovsky. Now, he was the wind-up merchant, I think, of the weekend, wasn't he, gents? Scoring in front of the Port against Auckland to put Perth 2-1 up. Now, his celebration absolutely boiled you-know-what for Jake Brimmer amongst many others in front of them, doing his 6-7 celebration. Are we fans of this?
Mate,
do you like it?
No, see, he's got everyone annoyed just because he got 6-7 when it... this whole thing, because he took the number, fair play to him, he's back down, he's doubled down on it and gone in, and do you know what? I don't mind this.
Yeah.
As a player, I love the interaction with opposition and with the fans. When fans were giving it to you and, you have a bad touch, it's all right for the fans to get onto you and, say you're terrible and blah, blah, blah and all the other expletives, and then you give it to them when you score. That's part of the game. I loved that.
And he knows as well, but he's put a target on his back. Next time they play Auckland and he makes a mistake, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to say, you loser. What are you doing? So he knows he's inviting that kind of pressure, but I think it's great. And was it someone said that he quoted Berisha and that was one of his idols, and I think that is awesome.
Best never wound anyone up.
Yeah. And bear in mind, Stefan Kolikovsky obviously had a very short period. He was a Wellington Phoenix player as well, right? And he was a part of that Wellington Phoenix team when they were getting slapped every time they played Auckland FC. So it's probably quite nice for him to be able to feel as though he might never get the chance to score. He might never score another A-League goal. The last one he did, at least he can look back and have some fun with it. Thank you very much as ever for watching Turtle A-Leagues. Vince, hopefully we'll be back next week. He's not very well at the moment, but get better soon. Vinny, if you are watching, go out and watch the games this week and get your tickets via the A-Leagues website. We'll see you next week on Turtle Leagues.